thank you, Idea, and welcome everybody. And thanks a million for attending this presentation on strategic partnership and Saolta's experience with strategic partnership. I have to say I was kind of excited. I was saying this to Lee and Maximiliana just before everybody came on to have the opportunity to do this, because it gave me space to reflect on partnership and on I suppose Saolta's experience with partnership and what partnership is, and our strategic partnership, and you know how we have all collaborated together through shared values. Nick Doran is my name, and I'm, as Lee mentioned, the program manager for Saolta, which is a strategic partnership for adult and community education in the adult and community education sector in Ireland. So our strategic goal is to increase accessibility, quality, and effectiveness of global citizenship education in the adult and community education sector. And we've done this through an Irish Aid funded strategic partnership. And the whole concept of strategic partnership, which I'll go into a little bit in a few minutes, has become much more prevalent in the last number of years because the benefits of strategic partnership and the capacity building and the shared values that can be promoted through strategic partnership have really come to the fore in terms of making a better world, quite simply, and creating a more inclusive, accessible, and just world. So the strategic partners are lined out down below there in by their logos. So Development Perspectives is the lead partner for whom I work. They're a global citizenship education NGO in the adult and community education sector. Then AINTUS are the National Adult Learning Organisation of Ireland. Irish Rural Link are kind of what they say on the tin. They're a network of rural communities around Ireland, which Irish Rural Link connects together and provides access to resources and kind of community education and learning. Concern Worldwide, I'm sure a lot of you have heard of before, is an international development NGO with a huge amount of experience abroad, particularly in African countries. Maynooth University, particularly the Adult and Community Education Department of Maynooth University, are also one of the departments, one of the partners. They have a huge amount of experience in research and in the development of initial teacher education, the development and delivery of initial teacher education for adult and community education. Then Cork Education and Training Board, who are the newest member to the partnership, who just came on at the beginning, officially at the beginning of this year, are an education training board in Cork who are involved in further education and training, which is a huge part of what the partnership Saolta is or exists in adult in further education and training. And as I mentioned, this partnership is funded by Irish Aid. Okay, so I just want to contextualize this a little bit first. So as I've mentioned before, it kind of sent me down a bit of a rabbit hole around like just looking back into what partnership is, and so I kind of wanted to contextualize this whole presentation around what came out of this, and it was exciting because I haven't really had, I suppose, the space to just sit and reflect and go through what partnership is and you know how beneficial it can be to individuals or organizations. And it was interesting when I typed the word partnership into Google and hit enter and looked at images. The majority of the images were men shaking hands. So I thought this was really interesting because partnership, you know, it has a huge amount to do with communication, and how partnership is framed and how we understand it is defined by things like putting word searches into Google. So yeah, so this was a really interesting thing, I thought. And on top of that, an awful lot of the hits that came back from the search that I did were very, very business oriented in their language and quite kind of profit oriented, I suppose, in relation to what their partnership goals were. So I dove around and I was looking for a definition of partnership. And this was the beginning of my evolution of the understanding of partnership before I started really diving into a reflective period, I suppose, on what Saolta's partnership is about. So this particular definition of partnership is taken from Wikipedia, would you know? But I changed it a little bit because I'm quite always conscious of I suppose, poetics in language. So anyway, this definition is a partnership is an agreement where parties consent to cooperate to advance their mutual interests. I thought this was quite a good definition of what partnership is. And the bit that I changed was consent, because it said originally a partnership is an agreement where parties agree to cooperate to advance their mutual interests. So this irked me, so I had to change it. So this was kind of the beginning of the evolution of my reflection period on partnership and Saolta's experience of that. So I want to take that and then go to a quote taken from Mary Robinson at the Mary Robinson Climate Conference, which took place in Ballina in County Mayo in July last year. And it really has stuck with me so much. And it stuck with me because it really defines how important definitions are, I suppose, and communication is in relation to how we cooperate and collaborate and establish partnerships. So at the start of the climate conference, her keynote address, she said that the climate and biodiversity problems are communication problems. And I think this is entirely true, because as I've put in the little subtext down there, which is my own words, communication entails cooperation. And words and language and the evolution of words and language, it is by default a type of collaboration, of partnership, and of cooperation, because we all somewhat agree that words mean the same thing and do the same thing and have the same intention and functionality and purpose. So it's really important to understand that we're working from a cooperative basis and a partnership basis in relation to all of the work that we carry out around social justice, around climate justice, around biodiversity, around gender rights, around racial justice, all of these things. It's so important about how we define this. And the promotion of what partnership is, and particularly around how we define the values embedded in partnership, is really, really important in this. And so this then took me down a rabbit hole of values. So the values of society, I suppose, today have kind of come to a point where there's, like I've titled this slide, social atomization and emphasis on values-based partnership, and emphasizing particularly the furthest behind first, which is an area of values that I think that all of the organizations that I've mentioned a few minutes ago that are part of Saolta have overlapping sets of values. But this social atomization has I think maybe become much more prevalent more recently with the growth of social media, where language and language use is kind of drifting away from its cooperative origins, from its partnership kind of origins, where there is mutual understandings of concepts and mutual understandings of the way the world works, the political way the world works, the social way the world works. And people now have this completely diversified sets of opinions. And I suppose the types of language and ideals and ideas that we promote are core to informing people's views and worldviews on how the world works, and they're core to being able to, I suppose, establish partnerships and more coherent views of what's important in the world. Because I think that social atomization is really important it's really important to tackle social atomization head on. And what's the opposite of social atomization? Is partnership, it's collaboration, it's working together, it's understanding shared values and understanding that at the baseline, we all have sets of shared values that are really important. So the shared values that each of the organizations that Saolta works with have are social justice, so a human rights-based approach to our work. They're inclusive. The furthest behind first is a phrase that I think is really at the core of a lot of the work that we do. And they are participatory. So learner-led is a really, really core part to the work of global citizenship education across each of the partners. And so just to say really quickly then as well, I'd mentioned earlier that there's been a foregrounding of the importance of partnership from Irish Aid, who are our main funder, and that is evident in the number of strategic partnerships that exist across post-primary, third level, primary education in global citizenship education, because it's a much more powerful tool for capacity building. So the genesis of this maybe could be taken from United Nations Economic and Social forum for partnership, who say that through unprecedented, bold global partnerships, the international community must radically raise its ambitions. So they put an emphasis on partnership in about 2005. And then Irish Aid have, as I've mentioned, been putting a huge emphasis on partnership for the last number of years. And they say that our work in GCE is carried out in partnership with many committed individuals and organisations across the formal, non-formal, informal education and civil society sectors in Ireland. So partnership is core. It's really crucial. And this is evident as well in a lot of research and outputs from global citizenship education and from the principles of global citizenship education. So Arnstein's ladder, for example, is a perfect example of it. Her first name escapes me now. I think it's Shirley Arnstein, but you can look her up anyway. She produced this document, this article in 1969 around the importance and the primacy of partnership and participation. And highlighted the different kind of areas of partnership and where some areas aren't really partnership at all. So down at the bottom, manipulation, therapy, informing, and then in the middle, kind of consultation, placation, and then partnership, delegation, and citizen control up at the top. So partnership being one of the core values. The Sustainable Development Goals that we all know so well. Partnership up at the very tip top, above all of them, is a red thread that runs through all 17 of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And this highlights the importance that partnership plays in achieving the Agenda 2030 and the Sustainable Development Goals. It's impossible without partnership, without shared knowledge, without sharing experience and a shared understanding, and without learner-led citizen participation in all of the decisions that are made, which is something going back to Arnstein's ladder that she really put a huge amount of emphasis on in her article. That the understanding of power and that power needs to be devolved down to citizenry so that they are the ones who make the decisions. Again, the GCE journey, so the 5 Ps, people, prosperity, peace, partnership, and planet. Each of these have partnership inherent to them. It is essential to each of those elements of the 5 Ps of global citizenship education. With that and with definitions and what partnership is, I want to quickly go through just a couple of some snippets from each of the individual organizations that make up Saolta to highlight the overlap and the similarity in the language between each of the organizations and how important that is then to achieving our final goals. And then I'm going to go through just a few examples of some of the collaboration and the collaborative work that we've worked on. And how important it has been that we do share these values and that we're all aiming for the same goal, and that we have the same beliefs in what a better world looks like. So development perspectives. So our vision, it's quite simple: to live in an equitable, just, and sustainable world. So our mission is to tackle poverty, inequality, and climate change through transformative education and active global citizenship. And you'll see elements of this language built into the strategic goal of Saolta as well, which I had mentioned at the top. So I'm just going to skip back up to it for a second. So to increase accessibility, quality, and effectiveness of global citizenship education in the adult and community education sector. So then Irish Rural Link, established in 1991 to represent the interests of locally based rural groups in disadvantaged and marginalised rural areas at local, national, and EU level. So there's so much inclusivity in that language. Aintus, we advocate and lobby for quality education for all adults and raise awareness of the impact of adult learning on people's lives and on society. So again, for all and raising awareness. So, and quality education, making sure there's inclusivity and making sure there's a social justice element, which Aintus puts a strong emphasis on in all of the work that they do. Concern worldwide, this is taken from their values. So our vision and mission and our work are all defined by one goal: ending extreme poverty, whatever it takes. We believe that no one should have to live in fear and that they won't have a home to sleep in. So Cork ETB is a driving force of education and training in Cork, providing high quality services which are innovative, responsive, and inclusive. Again, an emphasis on inclusivity. And this is something that it's a red thread that pours through each of the organizations in Saolta. So through Cork ETB, there is a pathway for every learner. Again, justice and equality. and then the Adult and Community Education Department at Maynooth University. So adult education is the study of how we learn and develop as adults to collaborate in the creation of a just, equitable, and sustainable society. Adults bring their personal and social experiences into education, emotionally, intellectually, and physically. We transform lives and communities through adult and community education. This really gives a more holistic view of what adult and community education is. But again, this is similar to the principles that are so dearly held by AINTIS, and it revolves hugely around equitable and just social transformation. So we also have a partnership with Development Education Network Liberia, and this is another really important element to the partnership work within Saolta, because the transformative education mission that Saolta has to embed global citizenship education into adult and community education throughout the island of Ireland, it has to be understood from a global perspective. So there's a kind of a catchphrase that goes around, which is think global, act local. So partnerships with international organizations are really, really vital in order to be able to take ourselves out of our bubble of understanding and the parameters that we put on ourselves in terms of understanding the way the world works. So yeah, part of the mission of Development Education Network Liberia, the primary thrust of our work is training and transformation using Delta methodology. Developed by Anne Hope and Sally Timmel, Delta integrates insights from 5 major sources. Paulo Freire's work, who is a crucial element of adult community education, on critical awareness, human relations, training, and group work, organizational development, social analysis, and spiritual sources of information. So embedded in those frames of reference is a huge amount of inclusion and social justice, and elements of inclusion and social justice. And Development Education Network Liberia have an enormous amount to contribute to the partnership that Saolta engages in relation to our work. So at the moment, we are organising a preparatory visit to Denel to establish what is going to be a 2-year exchange programme with adult community tutors and educators from both Ireland and Denel. So there will be a group of around 14 coming from Liberia to Ireland, and then vice versa, a group of around 14 going from Ireland to Denel. So this is a really exciting part of the programme, which could not happen without partnership, and could not happen without the experience and contributions of the other partners of Saolta as well. This is the culmination somewhat of the what I was saying was the evolution of my understanding of partnership when I began to reflect on all of this, because I'm going to skip back up to the top definition again really quickly. So partnership is an agreement where parties consent to cooperate and advance their mutual interests. I mean, I think that is quite succinct, but it's a little bit dry, I suppose. And then maybe there's so much more that could be added to that. And there's so much more that could be added to what my evolution of understanding is as well. So my evolution of understanding brought me to the point where I thought that partnership is more a collaborative intertwining of values-based action. And I thought that was a kind of a succinct definition. And that's based on the work of AINTIS, who have, through collaboration, brought us in contact with Northern Ireland Further Education and their vast community education network. Concern, who have given us access to and information and support with their huge international experience and community connections. Irish Rural Link, with their vast rural community connections and their experience with local authorities and TDs. So, for example, they brought Sean Fleming to our most recent showcase event in 2023, which took place in Portlaoise, which is Sean Fleming's hometown. Maynooth University, with their initial teacher education training and their links to the International Development Department in Maynooth, plays a huge role in informing and defining, again, what partnership is. Then Cork Education Training Board of Further Education and Training and their experience in further education and training and all of the social justice areas around that. And then ourselves, Global Development Perspectives, with our global citizenship education expertise. And again, Irish Aid are core to this by being the funders of Saolta, the programme. So I thought that nice colouredy intertwining thread on the right-hand side kind of summed it up quite well. So I'm going to just wrap up with this. This is kind of my final point. I wasn't sure if I'd have time to say it, and I'm going to give you a Menti, and you can fill it out maybe after this in the questions period. There's an experiment that was carried out years ago, and there's many of these experiments that revolve around language and the impact of language and the impact of definitions and defining and putting parameters and contextualizing what it is that we do, so that we understand the world through a lens of social justice values, of equality values, and of active citizenship values as well. And this experiment I always think is kind of interesting. So it's by a couple of researchers, Elizabeth Loftus and John Palmer, and it's quite old. It's from, I think, the late 60s or early 70s. And they conducted an experiment just on the impact, the impact of language and how language affects the way we perceive the world. So they showed two groups of 50 students a video of two cars crashing into each other. And the first group of 50 students, they said, how fast were these cars? They showed both groups the same video. They said, how fast were these cars going when they collided? And then the second group of students, they asked, how fast were these cars going when they smashed? And just by the difference in the words, the first group with the word collided estimated that the cars were going about 30 or 40 kilometers an hour. And the second group with the word smashed being used estimated they were going about 60 or 70 kilometers an hour. So it's incredible what the impact of just language can have on the way that we perceive the world. And so that's why it's so important through partnerships and through this evolution and development and emphasis that's being put on partnerships that we really foreground and promote collaborative work through the language that we use, and try to bring people in and have them on board with the type of work that we're doing, and not use confrontational language, or not try to challenge people too much, but try to understand and encourage and learn, I suppose. And this is where a learner-led partnership comes into being, with all the experience of the different partners that I've highlighted earlier. So, like I said, it'd be great if you could fill out this Menti. So there's a question in there. So I really just want to know, like, to throw in some words, like, what is your understanding of partnership after this talk? So that's me finished, and I'd like to really thank very much IDEA and Lee and Maximiliana for having me on to talk. I've really enjoyed it, and I've enjoyed the process of this, just being able to dive back into what partnership is, and how effective it is, and how useful partnership is. And yeah, so thank you all very much.